while it may be true that there is some kind of a creator force in the universe that created life on Earth exactly as it is, as some people believe, clearly something got created. We didn't come out of nothing. So the concept of a God or the concept of a creative force makes sense. Things don't just emerge out of nothingness, right? But then if there's a creative force, that must have emerged out of nothingness. So it's just a lovely conundrum of life to try to figure that out. In any case, I'm a sociologist, and I'm really also in different ways, I suppose, an anthropologist, but I think about these things, the things that anthropologists think about, and I think about the origin of life. And we have a pretty good story. I realize there are religious texts that have stories, and science has a story, and the science story is actually pretty fascinating, quite complicated, and just filled with lots of data. And the fundamental story is that human beings emerged somewhere in the Nilotic region of Africa. Homo sapiens started to move out. First off, Homo neanderthalensis moved out, Homo erectus moved out, but Homo sapiens, this is in the red. And some maybe, as best that we know, 250 to 300,000 years ago, started traveling around Africa and going up into Europe and into Asia, down into Oceania, across the Bering Strait and into the Americas. Okay? As people migrated to different regions of the planet, they experienced or encountered different climate conditions and different foods and different diseases. And the sum total of the differences is that as people migrated around, our bodies adapted. Because some bodies appeared to be more adaptive for different situations, like a really hot humid climate, a really hot dry climate, a cold arid climate, or a cold humid climate, and somehow coupled with diets that people were taking in, coupled with the things people use to build their shelters, coupled with diseases, certain bodies were more fit for certain situations, more suitable. And what it meant was that those bodies tended to reproduce successfully. And their heirs, the people that they gave birth to, that followed them, subsequent generations, tended to have their genetic admixtures in their particular phenotypes and their characteristics, bodily characteristics. So as they carry those through generation after generation, those certain characteristics become more adaptable, and then those characteristics become more common. And then as people are moving around thousands upon thousands of generations, we tend to see people with very different features. So we don't all look alike. If people would have stayed in one tiny region of the planet, mostly we would all have very similar features. There would be some differences, but mostly we'd be very similar. So that's how it happens. Now, what it means is that, for me, is it's really interesting to pay attention to people's physical features, like my own. You know, when I look in a mirror, I don't see Sam Richards. I see the sum total of generations upon generations upon generations of evolutionary trajectory, of my ancestors passing genetic characteristics down to their ancestors, and then on and on and on, and ultimately you get to me, and how you get to my nose and my eyes and my hair and my size and my skin color and all sorts of things. So for me, this stuff is really, really interesting. And it's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start with Asia. And this is all of Asia. So first off, if you say something about Asia, we're going to say something about Asian Americans. So I want you to think about this. Or just say something about Asians. I just make a generic statement about Asian, people of Asian ancestry. Note that I'm talking about all of these countries: Japan, the Koreas, China, India, Mongolia, Pakistan, Bhutan, Taiwan, the Philippines, the Pacific Islands, right? Singapore, Malaysia. Look at all these countries that have very different cultures. And within those countries, there are many, many different cultures and languages. And so there's almost nothing you can say about Asians that would be true of all Asians. In fact, there is nothing you could say. Same with Europeans. Same with Africans. Same with Latin Americans. There's just nothing you can say. So I just want to start there, understanding that everything we do in this class in some ways is based on generalizations. Okay? Cool? So we're going to start there. This is all of Asia, so keep that in mind. When we talk about Africa, understand that Africa is the birthplace of human beings. There's more diversity in Africa than any other continent, any other landmass in the world, by far. When we talk about the slave trade, we talk about slavery, and we talk about slaves coming from Africa, slaves being taken from Africa and brought to the Americas. In fact, slaves weren't taken from Africa. Slaves were taken from particular parts of Africa. Africa is so immensely diverse, just to say slaves are taken from Africa misstates exactly the complexities of what happened. Africa is it's just throwing Africa together in one landmass, one name, as though all of these thousands of groupings, of ethnic groups, of tribes, just like the European tribes, right? That we could put them all together, and the peoples and the civilizations. And so therefore, this is the area out of which people came to the Americas. And most people who were taken out of Africa went into the Caribbean or into South America. So not into the Americas. Okay? And very few from Mozambique coming around, but the vast majority.